Alright, welcome back. I've been away, as most of you know, so I apologize for being so late with this. So first off, I have to eat my words here. When I reviewed the PNSO Yangchuanosaurus shanyouensis, a few of you asked me if I thought that meant we might see a magnus. I expressed my doubts, and yet here we are with the same. And I think this will be a big relief to those of you who are lamenting the minuscule size of the shanyouensis. So, after the mandatory I told you so's, let's get to it. And immediately, I think you can see that the size difference between this and the shanyouensis is very stark. This is, I think you'll agree, a much more respectable size than most of us would have liked for Yangchuanosaurus. While Yangchuanosaurus shanyouensis was estimated at 8 meters or 26 feet, Yangchuanosaurus magnus has been estimated at up to 10.8 meters or 35 feet. Paul considered the two conspecific and estimated a collective length of 11 meters or 36 feet. And at roughly 31.5 centimeters or 12.4 inches along this curve, this model is about 1 to 35. And as you can see, there are browns again, but this time I don't get much of a stripy feel, perhaps because of how far down the dark in the dorsal extends, and how these patches look. You'll see the same kind of careful application and beautiful fades we've seen in other PNSO theropods, and taken in and of itself, the colour is just beautifully applied. Given the possibility that two species are conspecific, the similarity in colour gives us the opportunity for that interpretation if we want. Now first, the head. In my last review, I said the Yangchuanosaurus shanyouensis seems to be based on proportions of the holotype subadult. This time round, we see that in magnus, we do indeed get a bulbous depth seen in the presumed adult, with the keratinous buildup in the nasal region I think many of us are familiar with. I'd say they appear close enough to various reconstructions, but theropod specialists may beg to differ. We should note, however, that in general, Yangchuanosaurus shanyouensis is far more complete. The magnus skull is incomplete, but in the elements we have, we already see the different, more robust proportions compared to shanyouensis. So then the rest of the skull has to be built on available material, referencing shanyouensis and often Synraptor, another metriacanthosaurid. The one defining quality I loved of the Yangchuanosaurus shanyouensis was fineness, which went with the small size of that model. Now, being larger, you of course don't have that, but you do have a bigger canvas for regional variety, and I think you see that this is really a very nicely detailed sculpt, as always. PNSO doesn't disappoint, and you can see here why it's at the top of its game. The scales, textures, the keratinous structures all have a habit of looking like they belong on a real animal. The coloration is beautiful, and in this one area you see all the shades and layers that PNSO does so well. I especially love this streak in the maxillary area. And the fades from dark to light in the labial area is really very soothing. Now the mouth articulates, and the point of having lips to me is to see the wonderful seal created. And here, you'll see in general is actually good, but there are still some shortfalls in terms of visible gaps viewed from certain angles. And of course, the looseness of the jaw joint, depending on your model, will also mean that your mileage can vary. Now we get to the body. Now we don't have a lot of Yangchuanosaurus magnus, so this follows rather closely to many suggested reconstructions we've seen, except with a change in the neck posture and a resultant updrawing of the head. As we do a once over of the model, you'll see again the kind of mix of detail with different levels of fineness throughout the body, the folds and the creases. You can see here the fine dorsal scutes. Of course, a subtlety of color blends. The very dark patterning then blends so smoothly into the surrounding skin. Just such a soothing blend in the fading of these stripes down here. Beautiful segue. Just such wonderful texturing. Even in the darkness of the dorsal, you can make out that fine detail. Just look at this fine detail. We go down the arms. To the finely tipped claws. Look at the detail in the fingers and hand. Hind limbs. Really, once again, very nice detail. The scales on the leg are really exquisite here. Down to the feet. I really love the very subtle layering of colors. And finally, the tail. Alright, comparisons. And the first must-do is of course the recent PNSO Yangchuanosaurus shanyouensis. We've already seen the size difference, and here I think if you compare this to a typical reconstruction, and then this one, both look pleasingly close enough to my theropod ignorant eyes to make me happy. And if we follow some of the current thinking here, if you take shanyouensis to be a subadult and a magnus as the adult, then those of you who skipped that one will, I suspect, now want it, if only to pair together with this offering. As you can see, the colours are echoes of each other. I can almost believe how as the animal matures, a deepening of the colour over here occurs. And although I have to say, I do wish they'd gone with a separate distinct colour scheme for both the body and the tail, in the magnus as in the shanyouensis. Just looks so good together. And here's another matriacanthosaurid, the PNSO synraptor. Then, as an allosauroid, we have to compare it to the PNSO Allosaurus, which is also roughly 1:35 scale for a 10-meter animal. And those who were upset with how much smaller the shanyouensis was, because you didn't know it was suggested to be a subadult, can now be slightly consoled when we look at the more respectable size of the magnus today. And for another large theropod, we have here the PNSO Torvosaurus. Incidentally, one of my viewers, John Avery, has written some extensive comments on the proportions of that Torvosaurus, both the head and the body, which many of us were unsure about, so do look out for those. I think very well worth a read. And of course, the other big bad of the Jurassic, the very recently released PNSO Saurophaganax. And I think you can see just how respectable the size of this Yangchuanosaurus is compared to the Saurophaganax. Lined up together, it's really a delight to see these Jurassic theropods together. I should mention that Yangchuanosaurus does cross into the early Cretaceous. From the upper Shasimiao Formation, let's have the PNSO Mamensisaurus. The Collectae Mamensisaurus, the PNSO Tuojiangsaurus, and the Collectae Giganspinosaurus. And then the badasses of the Cretaceous. We have the PNSO Wilson, and the Cameron T-Rex. So that's it for the PNSO Yangchuanosaurus magnus. Now this is now the third theropod with lips, and I think it's safe to say that those of us inclined that way can breathe a sigh of relief, knowing the only impediment to otherwise perfect potential purchases has now been rectified. And the mouth seal is sure not perfect, but it's close. And I think that this change also does mean that some of you who love PNSO models so much you'd willingly pay at least 2 or 3 times the price of the model just to get custom lips can save a lot of money moving forward. And of course, being part of a double release with Zool also marks a double happiness, because if we really are pivoting away from theropods, then we have a wealth of possibilities ahead. Constant surprises, so that each one is awaited for with eager anticipation. Not that I'm an advocate for vices, but it might even be fun to get a pool going, betting on what the next one will be. So that's it from me. Apologies for the tardiness of this review, and I'll see you in the next video. Now I'm going to get some sleep.